Welcome to Faith Fondue, a podcast featuring author and speaker Haley DeMaria and teacher and blogger Ann Strickers. Faith Fondue will feature a melting pot of topics, ignited by a flame, our faith, and guided by the Holy Spirit. It's the week of December 12th, the third Sunday in Advent, Gaudete Sunday. It is the Sunday of joy. Our pink or rose candle, whatever you want to call it, also known as the shepherd's candle, is lit. I, in my house, am in the middle of midterms, college applications and acceptances, or not, and trying to plan for Christmas not at home. Anne, how was your week?
That is quite a list, Haley. Okay, I'm going to bring to our fondue pot tonight. Let's talk about, Christmas cards. I'm curious about your process, giving, sending, receiving. I'd like to talk maybe a little bit about Hallmark movies and the sports tree that now decorates my office, in addition to a giving tree. We will talk about Matthew's Gospel, and I will talk about the Sunday's second reading, which is related to the theme of that candle, the Gaudete Sunday. So we'll talk about joy and rejoicing. And I'm curious where this will lead us for our takeaways. So talk to me, Haley. I have a student that I have not taught, but I really admire her and really hope she gets into Notre Dame. So I was asked my boss today, hey, when is the early decision coming out? You told me it's on Thursday. So fill me in. What's going on with college applications, the process? This is your second go around.
It is my second go around, and it is, as most things with people who have multiple children, it's different the second time around. Actually not a whole lot of news in our world in terms of acceptances. He's gotten into a couple of his top choices for schools and, still waiting to hear from a couple. But, I think when other people get in or don't to college, it allows you to reflect on the process a little more. I think, when your own child gets in it, you're wrapped up in it. So you don't have the 10,000 foot view. But, I had some good friends whose kids got into their first choice over the weekend. ED, early decision, is binding, so that, you only apply if that's where you're committed to go. So that was exciting for them. And then, I know some friends whose kids didn't get into their top choices. And, same school, both great kids. You just wonder why one does and one doesn't. And I really think it goes back to your child will end up where they're meant to be. And whatever path that is, whatever school that is, but it's super curious to me, and I need to look at myself too. So this is, this is a lens on me as well. But just before we started taping, I got a text message from a friend whose son got into his top choice, and she wrote something like, "Phew, I think I was more nervous than he was," and I think that speaks volumes about today's parents. We seem to be so wrapped up in getting in, not getting in, scholarship money, no scholarship money, who else got in, who didn't. And I need to figure out why. Am I that way? I don't know. It's easier to see when it's somebody else, right?
Sure.
But there's so much wrapped around where you get in and where you don't. And it's so hard because there are a lot of great kids not getting into great schools. And it has nothing to do with who they are as a child, or person. I shouldn't say child, as a person. So my heart goes out to everyone who is waiting to hear whether they get in or not. You hope they get in gracefully and joyfully. And you hope that they understand that there are a lot of people who didn't get in either. And I do think social media is a really tough thing right now. And the schools, it's part of their marketing. The schools ask you to do it. They send you the hashtag. They post your picture, use this hashtag. that's
Wow.
exciting,
Yeah.
but it's hard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, again, nothing personal in our house at this point, but I do think you're able to see the bigger picture when you're not wrapped up in it. And I just think I saw a lot more of the biggest picture
Yeah.
this week. So that's where we
Yeah.
are. That's a
No, I
lot.
mean, you were asked a lot of questions and, constantly where people put what we value. I mean, I think it's okay to raise those questions and to ask ourselves, what is it that we value? And like you put on yourself too. You're like, where am I in this? But, Haley, it reminds me of just one more distinction of where like being an athlete is just a privilege because those kids, many of them get to know ahead of time. And so they are just like devoid. They don't have to deal with all the stress and, all the waiting. And it's such a relief and it's such a privilege. But going back to your question, why are parents, I mean, the easy guess is parents want their children to be happy, and it's so out of our control, this game of college admissions, right? I mean, it's just like for some of these schools, it's the biggest question mark that's out there. But, I feel for kids who maybe are going to a state school and there's great state schools like in California and other places. And that's not, or maybe they're just affordability or just realistically. And also so many kids aren't ready to go away to school
Right.
either. So, the whole game that we're playing by our worth equaling, where we're going, it's one more, I don't know, piece that people use to identify themselves with in positive ways, but also, right, in ways that can be, I don't know if I'm going to add anything new to the conversation other than I appreciate you raising the question.
Well, and I think, what I'm hearing you say is what I'm seeing going on in my world in kind of the mid-Atlantic area, you're seeing in California as well. So it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But you mentioned sports and I totally get that. My sister, years ago, she graduated from high school in 96. She was recruited by and ended up playing at the volleyball at the University of Virginia. But her application actually came with a stamp on the top. Now, this is back when you had paper applications, right? A stamp on the top that said pre-approved or, pre-accepted, or I don't know what it was. So you're right. There's no stress there. She knows that she just has to fill out the application.
Right.
But the other thing,
it's as obvious as you can make it.
Exactly. Yep. And it was in like September. So, of her senior year. So that was an easy one. But I'm curious, you mentioned sports, and you mentioned a sports tree. Now, let me tell you, we have 7 Christmas trees in our house. We are so nutty. I'm looking at one in Jamie's office. He has one up in his office. We are such nuts about Christmas. We don't have a sports tree. What is that? Because I think I need one.
Oh, you do. I mean, do you have a Notre Dame tree?
Actually, we don't have. You could probably consider Jamie's tree a Notre Dame
Irish
tree.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got the Notre Dame ornaments, the annual Notre Dame ornaments on it, and then a bunch of cruise ships. So he tells you what he loves.
That's great. Okay, the sports tree. I've wanted to do it for a long time. So I oversee a group called the Athletic Directors Council. These is one student athlete from each team. We meet with them fairly regularly. Think of it as like Hall President's Council at college or Student Athletic Advisory Committee. SAC is the acronym for the NCAA for student athletes. And I asked each person to bring in an ornament reflective of their sport. Okay, so if they're the cross country rep, bring in something like that represents cross country or make your own.
Okay.
And it was so fun, super creative. For example, our varsity boys golfer drilled a hole through a golf ball that morning and then put a piece of yarn through it. That was his ornament. Okay. Other people made their own, like they just took a bulb, and this one girl just put, St. Francis cross country with like a silhouette of a runner. It was so cute. She did a great job. Other people bought them or made them, but it was, there are now 26 varsity. There's 26 different sports that are represented on that tree. So it was fun.
Okay. I love that.
And we also we brought in a donation. I I just think it's so important whenever we can to remind young people and myself that we are always called to serve and to give, right? And so we chose 3 gifts. Our school is doing a virtual toy drive. So I said, okay, we're going to pick 3 gifts to give, what we'll purchase for the toy drive, and it has to be sports related. So they went with a scooter because I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll give you that. We went with a duffel bag for your sports equipment. And
Okay.
then the last one was ear pods, not like Apple, but just ear pods so you could work out. That was how the kids interpreted it. So it was fun. We did that, had hot chocolate. Once again, I've seen this, working in schools now. We took a group photo and I was playing like Last Christmas from Glee because I love that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, if you really want to bring down the house, you have to play Mariah Carey. All I Want for Christmas Is You. And it's guaranteed. Like high school kids, they just stop and
Love
they
it.
start singing and dancing. It's amazing. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you got
awesome.
it. Christmas carols are interesting like that because you never know what's going to stick, right?
That one I know. Yeah. I
Every
thought,
pop star's got their own rendition and Christmas album, and they're all singing the
yeah.
same songs, but boy, that
Yep.
one is
I know. Some are just like they were making fun of Paul McCartney this morning on the radio, simply having a wonderful Christmas time. And they're like, oh man, that's one of his worst. That one's just not good. And someone's like, yeah. And can you believe a band did a cover of it? And they were laughing. It was funny, like, because it's true. You're like, you hear these songs and then people comment on them. And then you start to think about it. Like I personally, Haley, cannot listen to Feliz Navidad. I just can't do it. It has so little content. Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Prospero Año, we felicidad. Like that's it. It's just terrible. So I hope I haven't ruined it. I probably have, but once somebody brought that to my attention, it was over. So I really want to know your thoughts on Christmas cards. We have Christmas carols there.
hmm
Are you the picture, put it in an envelope, send it out? I feel like I've gotten a Christmas card from you. I feel like I didn't get one. I think, what talk to me about this.
So I love Christmas cards. I will send them forever. I know some people have
Okay.
gone digital. I know some people post them on social media. Maybe those people still send paper cards and I was just taken off the list. But I will always send them. I love them. I always have pictures of our family. I have a lot of friends who just send pictures of their kids. I love seeing
Yeah.
their kids. I want to see them too.
Yeah.
I don't get to, some of my friends live in Idaho or California and I haven't seen them in years. I like seeing my friends. As I age and get gray hair and whatever else is going to happen to me, you will still see me on my Christmas card.
That's
And I always write a Christmas poem
okay. Okay.
that covers all 4 of us, highlights from the year, um, and I love it. I have a book of them that I've kept over the years, so I can go back and read them. That the Christmas poem for me, one year I thought about not doing it. That did not go over well with my kids, so it made me realize they
Wow.
love it. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay.
It's not, there's only so many words that rhyme that you can come up with. So I feel like it sounds the same every year, but, and some are better than others.
Yeah.
But I love it.
Yeah.
I love writing the poem. I love the Christmas cards. I love putting them together. I love receiving them, but I want to see my friends too and not just their kids.
Okay. All right.
How
So it
about
sounds
you?
like you have some rules. I mean, some, preferences and
Mm-hmm.
some leanings. Yes. So my brother once told me, I think George H.W. Bush either he sent hundreds of Christmas cards. And, he was telling me that story is just like as a mark of who he was as a
Mm-hmm.
human being, a huge letter writer. I always think I won't send a lot of Christmas cards, and then I end up sending them all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't send photos because I don't have children, but I do like kind of being creative with like something. So last year I sent, magnets in on my cards that advertising our podcast,
Right.
or when my book was published, I had these postcards and I would include those in there. In fact, I should probably try to get rid of them and send those again. You know? So I like to do things like that, send something kind of fun, like, again, advertising something. This year I don't have that. And I have cards. I've done also where I've printed a photo of me with that person. So if there's a memory, it's like a photo frame, and then you can just print that on your computer. So I've done, like, it's not me with my family, my parents are on, some trip, but it's me with that individual or their family. So those are some things that I've done. One year I hung some on the refrigerator. One of my roommates didn't like the aesthetic, so I was kind of discouraged from putting them on the refrigerator. I have new roommates. We are putting cards on the refrigerator, but I'm not, because I get a lot of cards. I mean, we are kind of that generation that did send the photo thing. I don't know if younger people don't as much. So yeah. I will put the best ones on the fridge. Okay.
I love them. They go all around our kitchen windows. It's really hard to come off my Christmas card list. So ours is pretty extensive as well. And there's some people I haven't seen in 15 years. Some people I haven't seen since we left Pennsylvania 18 years ago, but they are on my Christmas card list.
That's great.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a way to keep in touch with people. It's not quite a lost art, but I can see where it might become one. I'll go down kicking and screaming. We usually keep ours up until Easter.
Oh, wow.
I love it because we used to keep them up until Valentine's Day, because I do have a few friends who don't send Christmas cards or holiday cards. They send Valentine's Day cards.
Yep.
So we started keeping all of them up until their card arrived. And then actually it was during COVID. We kept them up until Easter in 2020. Okay. And we did it again last year. And I thought, these cards, which I would say at least 90% of them are photo cards. We still do get some that aren't photos.
Yeah.
But
yep.
We have kind of a circular bay window where our kitchen table is, and this is where all of our Christmas cards are. It's everyone we love and know surrounding us. Why would I take that down? It's so great. And I just look up and I love it.
So positive. It's a positive outlook. I mean, I'm going to sound like a Grinch though, a little bit. Like, I'm surprised at some of the cards I get, Haley. So
are you being judgmental?
Coworker. What?
Are you being
Not
judgmental?
At all. I mean, it's a gift, but it's more like, I haven't taught. I mean, can we edit this out right now? Because I sound so terrible. Like, the coworker of like 20 years ago with his daughters, I'm just like, that's great, but we're not connected. We'll move on.
Okay.
So you set it up so beautifully, definitely in the Christmas spirit. Yes, I sound very judgmental. Like, why am I getting this card? As opposed to being like, wow, that's very thoughtful that they would want to reach out, and share some Christmas joy. So I'm going to take it back and appreciate it.
Well, on the flip side, so my mom and I go back and forth on this debate. We print out address labels. So we have this process where Jamie prints out the master list. I'm supposed to go through and change any addresses of people who have moved. He puts them on the labels. We print them out. We put the labels on. My mother finds that appalling. It is so impersonal. She handwrites every single Christmas card she sent. Now, she's probably not sending as many as we do. It is easy to come off her list. But there is, and I'm not saying that he's not thinking of you and your coworker is not sending you well wishes, but you could be on a list that gets printed out and stuck on an envelope. And
And I'm like, I'm honestly like, feel free to take me off. It's okay.
Well, yes. And that, just to bring it back to that, it's totally fine to come off a Christmas list. I know we came off of one this year, and it's kind of like, okay, about time. You're
not losing any sleep over this.
Well, but it's no ill will. It's just, in one thing, cards reality. Are expensive. Right. Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I mean, you're right about I don't know if that's a generational thing too, but like that for my parents is like, my mom has said that I don't understand this, where you just put the card in the envelope and it's like, yeah, whatever, rinse, wash, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat, so to speak.
Yes.
But
so don't feel badly about
tradition.
digging that hole. You're fine. It's a
Okay.
hole we're all
Thank
down.
you. It happened. But one thing that is definitely gone, so to speak, but I have one friend that still does this, is the form letter. Now, people used to make fun of the form letter in the house that I grew up in, like, oh, it's this bragging list and stuff. But I'll tell you that form letter is kind of, I have to say, it's sort of like social media. It's kind of like with Facebook, you kind of like it because then you can keep up with people, certain people. But at the same time, you're like, oh, is it you're just oversharing too much? With the form letter, a creative, witty letter, it's so like, it's nice because you do get the updates and it's like, thank you for sharing. I mean, that's what it's about, so I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing better than a witty, funny, clever, Christmas letter. I agree. All right, moving on to our spiritual stew.
Okay.
So mine comes from, it's sort of twofold. It's, this Friday's gospel is the beginning of Matthew 1:1-17. Okay. And I'm sure everybody remembers this passage, although I'm not sure people listen to it in its entirety. It is when you hear about Jesus's lineage. And, it starts off with the book of genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And it goes on for what seems like 10 minutes with all of these people's names. Who was the son of so-and-so? Who was the son of so-and-so? Half the people I haven't even heard of before. But it was the thing that really struck me when I read it this week was I just finished reading the Book of Lost Names. And this is a book about pretty much universal. It was a book club book, pretty much universal. Everyone in my book club loved it. It's a book based on a true story or true newspaper articles where after the Civil War, freed slaves would post notices in newspapers looking for lost friends or lost family members. And it's a really beautifully written kind of interesting story that takes place in the 1850s and then also in the 1980s. So it goes back and forth and, the stories eventually connect. But one of the things that reminded me of this book when I was reading was reading Matthew was the beginning of the story. And I need to look into this more because I'm going to imagine and think it's true because there was so much that was well researched and accurate in this book. They talk about, the author talks about how the main character, who is a freed slave, she was raised to recite her family members' names so that if they were ever separated, they would be able to list and go through and remember and recall who they are, where they're from. And it was just really fascinating, as she becomes separated, as she is, her mother sold off somewhere and she is looking for her family. She knows her whole family because of this kind of almost like a song that they had sung about their ancestors and all of their names. And I thought that's so cool in a terrible way because of the situation and the circumstances of slavery. But I read this in the Bible and I wonder, is that connected? Because slaves were so spiritual. They had such goodness and kindness in their heart, and really, I would imagine, had to rely on their faith, to get them through the horrors that they lived through. But there was such a connection there that I thought this is really powerful in the Bible. A gospel that I will be honest, I probably, you kind of zone out through.
Absolutely. Right.
But it brought on, it's such a different meaning having just read this book. So it was really kind of neat. It made me think differently about it. And it made me really kind of value that importance of, your lineage and your ancestors and probably things that we take for granted. So that was
Yeah.
an interesting read for me.
Love that connection, Haley. And what it says to me is, from two different perspectives. One, like, it's talking about essentially our humanity. I mean, for example, a slave who's deemed property and was treated less than human is somebody's son or daughter, somebody's sister or brother, someone's cousin, someone's, niece or nephew, and that has import and that has value. And that can't be lost, that God became one of us. Like Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, too, is human and became one of us and is from, he's from this lineage and we have record of it. And it's pretty powerful. I mean, it's named and it's recognized. And so, what those two hold up together, right, is that we want to deny the humanity of, right, a certain group who've been marginalized, and then to accept God as human, right? Wow, these are two things to hold. It's really quite meaningful. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, very nourishing. Good stew. Mine is in light of Gaudete Sunday. So this was the gospel reading. I mean, not the gospel, the second reading, but it was Paul's letter to the Philippians. And the priest noted that the word rejoice is there twice. So, the message is, Paul is saying, brothers and sisters, rejoice in the Lord always. I shall say it again, rejoice. And it was talking about the, call to be joyful, because I think so many times life is hard and we are aware of the suffering and we feel like, maybe our faith is telling us what not to do and to, I don't know, repent for your sins and, renounce yourself and say no to temptation. But really what we're reminded so many times, more than we probably realize, is that we are called to be joyful, to rejoice. And I appreciated that. That rose candle is a visible sign that we are called to rejoice. Christmas is near. We're, we're getting there. We've been waiting a long time, but like anything that is, that we prize or desire or want in life, the waiting is part of it. And like, it's nice to know there's these reminders like, hey, we're getting there. We're almost there.
Yeah.
It'd be great if we could say that about coming out of COVID, like,
yes.
Yeah. We're not there. We don't know.
No. And I love, this is the third week in Advent, which is, the theme for this week is joy.
I saw that in the notes.
And you're right. The anticipation is part of that joy too, right? It's, we love Christmas Day or, Christmas Eve, those, 48 hours, maybe Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. But though that time is not what it is without all the preparation, right? I think so much of what we love about celebrating those days are because we've done so much to lead up to it. But that's where I really love the four themes of Advent, where you first have that hope, where hope is all about anticipation and being hopeful for what's coming. And then just love, you get to that place of hope and then you're just filled with love for what's coming. And then, we're on the brink of it now, right? The joy is here. Like we are joyful. And then of course, next week is gifts, which I always, to me, when of course we can talk about this next week, but you think of gifts as presents, but obviously, Jesus gives us presents as well, but they're just not the ones you wrap. So this is a joyful time. And
right. I mean, then that's where, my mom is really into decorating. Okay. And this year she feels like she's done more than ever. And, she's just so excited about it. And I said, but Mom, you're bringing beauty to the world. Like, however you do that, there's something there. That's her gift. It's her gift to, when they have company, people over, people love to see, how she's decorated. And I think it's great. I think it brings her joy because it's her gifts and talents, using them. But also, I really do believe any time, like I was thinking about beauty as a virtue, anytime we bring beauty, whether I was at a funeral, like I said last Friday, the music was so beautiful. The cantor used to teach at the school where I taught, and this priest had worked for many years. Her voice is just, it is truly beautiful. Or, my sister, who's an artist, when she paints, like she doesn't have to do it, but she brings beauty to the world, right? And really, beauty brings joy, I think. So yeah, I didn't know, just to go back to the shepherd candle, the name for that, Haley. So I know that it's rejoice and gaudete, and the theme is joy, but I was struck by that when you said that earlier, that it's the shepherd's candle. So kind of an interesting, maybe that's my takeaway, is to find out why, I don't know what beauty shepherds bring to the world, but
in my brief understanding or reading in that, there
okay.
you could really, well, here's what it is. It's up for interpretation, right? Because nobody
Okay.
really knows. But I think it is this, I think it's the symbol that the shepherds of their joy.
Hmm.
But that's a good takeaway for you. That was my understanding of it.
Yeah.
I also felt like, although I didn't go back and reread them, I also felt like there was a lot of, although you know what, it might have been my own personal Advent reading, was about the shepherds,
Huh.
and the joy when they, when they
Yeah.
realized that, that Christ had been born, or that was, it was coming, he was coming. But yeah, that's a good takeaway. I also think, a great takeaway for me and for you. Well, first of all, I'm going to ask that you find joy in every Christmas card you receive. And if you're not joyful to receive it, I'll just sometimes I'll look up at the cards on the wall and I'll say a prayer for who I see.
Yes, right. I agree with
And
that. I
that's
think that's
always a default for me when my mind goes down a path that, maybe I don't need it to go down in
yeah,
terms of
right.
unjoyful thoughts. You just take a step back and say, you pray for them.
Yep.
But I think, my takeaway as we get closer to Christmas, as it's going to get a little crazy, we are going to be away for Christmas. That adds a level of
Yeah.
complexity to all of the planning.
No, where are you in
We're
Florida?
going to we'll be in Florida
Okay.
with
With
my
James'
in-laws. My
family.
parents will be
Okay.
there. My sister will be there.
Oh,
Yeah, it'll be nice.
that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. But sometimes the hectic does not equal joy. So
Okay.
my goal, my takeaway this week is to find joy every day, even if it's hectic, even if I don't feel like I'm getting everything done,
Okay.
and to pause and remember that this is a time for joy and hope and
Okay.
love and what
Okay.
really is important.
Love it. Um, I wanted to add to the fondue pot here for takeaways, stew, and flame, all of it together. I don't know how formally we've talked about it, but sacred places of Notre Dame and Advent journey. So every day, I wrote about this in my blog, but as you and I both know, there is a different, you know, member of the Notre Dame family, whether it's a student, a teacher, an administrator, a coach, and they talk about a space that is sacred to them. And I contend you don't need to have gone to Notre Dame to appreciate their beauty, although it's certainly, you feel that connection if you love Notre Dame. It's very special. But for me, Haley, it's my favorite way to pray during Advent. They ask reflection questions at the end. But one of the respondents is a Farley Hall resident, and she talks about a pathway between the lakes and St. Mary's. And for me, my sacred space is also a pathway. And so I appreciate it's not that pathway, but it's not like the grotto. It's not, the softball field at Notre Dame or the volleyball court. But I love that it was a pathway because there's that sense of journey. And this last week, or in the gospel, Mary goes to the hill country and makes haste to see Elizabeth. And I think about that journey and that pathway that she took. So kind of resonates with me and what I like to pray with. So a shout out to Notre Dame Alumni Association for that great gift.
It's so great. It's so great. It's mine actually seems to come at night. I get a text
Yeah.
message in the
Yeah. Because I
evening.
got mine like an hour, like maybe 2 hours ago.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
and
you're getting it.
it's yeah, I'm always very curious. First of all, I keep thinking they're going to run out of spaces. I think this is the third or fourth year they've done it. I think
It is.
it's the
You're
third
right.
year.
Third year. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but I tend to watch it at night just because I get it in. I'm afraid the text message will get buried in my
Yep.
phone if I don't. I love it. I love the small spaces, the big spaces. I love it when someone pops up that I know. I
Yeah.
think that's kind of fun.
Mhm.
It's really a different type of Advent reflection.
Yep.
So I love the creativity of it. But you're right. We'll have to post a link to it
Yeah.
either on social media or in the notes
Yeah.
for our podcast. But yeah, it's a great Advent reflection. And you're right. It's universal. It's certainly more meaningful or
Yeah.
very meaningful
Yeah.
to Notre Dame fans or
Right.
alum, because they'll know the spaces and they might have their own
Yeah.
connection to a certain place, but they're all universally, appropriate or relatable. So yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
great include.
Yeah. And I have shown them in class, and my students are going to reconciliation on Thursday. So I showed one from Father Joe Capora, where a classroom, a small meeting space, is his sacred space because that's where he goes for reconciliation. So yeah, I hope people find it meaningful, and for our listeners, I hope they'll check it out. Yeah, it's on a website. We'll definitely put up the link. But what a great way to rejoice, right? And to think about the theme, like you said, of hope, love, and now joy this week for Advent.
Yes, and we've got one more, and then we are in Christmas
Ugh,
week.
I
I
know.
know, so don't let that stress us out. It's just going to bring us
Okay,
joy.
that's right.
Um, but Anne, I hope you have a good week. I know it's a crazy one. We will keep all of the seniors in high school in their prayers who are
Yeah, yeah, and their
and
parents.
their
Yeah,
parents, yeah, as they begin to receive notifications about colleges and for everyone taking midterms or finals and just kind of this crazy rush of activity that takes place at the end of the year. May everyone find joy in the small moments and the large ones because there is joy and hope and love out there every day.
got it. So thanks, Haley. Have a
Have,
great week.
yep, you too.
Happy Advent.